When people heard that Chrisean Rock's son was in the headlines again, most of them just rolled their eyes and said, "What now?" It felt like nothing could surprise anyone anymore when it came to her. But let me tell you, this time it was different. What got leaked wasn't just a story or a rumor. No, this time it was medical records, real documents, files that revealed disturbing details about her baby. And when those details hit the internet, people weren't just shocked, they were furious. You won't believe what those papers exposed. It wasn't just about being a bad parent anymore. It was about putting a child in danger before he even got a chance at life. The leaked CPS files and hospital reports showed something no one was ready for. Her son, a baby who wasn't even 2 years old, had tested positive for alcohol and drugs. Yes, drugs. Substances that no child should ever have in their system were found in his tiny body. And that's just where it started. The reports also said that Chrisean had left her baby alone multiple times. One report claimed she went to a party and left him on the beach at 3 a.m. Can you imagine? A baby left alone at the beach in the middle of the night just because his mother wanted to party. What kind of mother does that? But here is the shocking part. It wasn't just one mistake. It wasn't just one night. The files showed a clear pattern of neglect, danger, and emotional damage. People began questioning how Chrisean even still had custody. Others said enough was enough, that her child needed to be taken away immediately. Some tried to defend her, saying maybe she didn't mean to harm her child. Maybe she just didn't know better. But let's be real. This wasn't ignorance. This was recklessness. And it was happening again and again. And just when people thought it couldn't get worse, more came out. The same medical files revealed that the baby was showing signs of something more serious, fetal alcohol syndrome. That's a condition that happens when a mother drinks heavily during pregnancy. People had suspected it before, but now there was actual proof. The boy couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't even crawl. He flinched every time Chrisean raised her hand, as if he was scared of what was coming. Some even said he acted like he'd been hit before. But this is where it gets interesting. Chrisean never admitted to anything in public. She kept acting like everything was fine, like people were just hating on her. But in private, she told someone that yes, she had used drugs while pregnant. Yes, she drank. She knew what she was doing, and she did it anyway. That's what made this story different. She didn't just make a mistake. She made choices. And her child was the one suffering for it. Now people started asking real questions. Why wasn't CPS doing anything? Why was this baby still in her care? Because if hospitals are supposed to report this kind of thing, and CPS is supposed to protect children, then how did this little boy slip through the cracks? This is how the system fails. Not when a bad parent does something wrong, but when nobody steps in to stop it. But the craziest part? Some people were still defending her. Even after everything, there were still fans saying she was doing her best, that people were judging her too hard. But let me ask you this. How is it judging when a baby is found with drugs in his body? How is it judging when that baby can't even smile at food, can't play, can't respond like a normal child? That's not hate, that's concern. And that concern was growing louder by the day. People couldn't stop talking. The internet was flooded with reactions, some in disbelief, some in pure anger. But deep down, everyone was wondering the same thing. How did it get this far? And more importantly, why didn't anyone stop it sooner? People started digging up old videos, old lives, old interviews, every little piece that could explain how this baby ended up in such a tragic condition. And then came that one moment, that live video that made everyone's stomach drop. In the video, Chrisean was holding her son, just casually playing around on camera. But right before she lifted her hand, she said something chilling. "Watch this." She raised her arm, and her baby's whole body jerked. He flinched, trembled, and tried to pull away from her, almost like he was trying to escape. At first, people thought maybe he was having a seizure, but then someone pointed out something that changed the whole meaning of that video. Did you notice she took a breath before doing it? She knew what was about to happen. Let me tell you, that video wasn't just disturbing, it was terrifying. It showed a baby that seemed to expect pain when his mother moved a certain way. And that wasn't something you could fake. That wasn't a camera trick. That was fear. Real, raw, learned fear. What baby acts like that around someone who's supposed to protect them? And then came the medical explanation. The leaked files explained that her son wasn't just reacting that way for no reason. He was dealing with spasticity, seizure disorder, and cortical visual impairment. These are serious medical conditions, conditions that affect how the brain functions. Cortical visual impairment, for example, affects how a child sees the world. It's not about the eyes, it's about the brain not knowing what it's looking at. This could explain why the baby didn't respond to movement, toys, or even food in the way a regular child would. And that was heartbreaking. But what made this even harder to accept was knowing that these conditions didn't just happen on their own. They were likely caused by the substances in his system during pregnancy, the alcohol, the drugs, the withdrawals, the seizures. All of this could have been avoided. And yet, this baby was the one paying the price. Not Chrisean, not the fans defending her, but the baby, the most innocent one in the whole situation. As the details poured out, people became more and more confused. If the files were real, if the conditions were this serious, if the neglect was this obvious, then why hadn't CPS taken action? And that's when people started learning how the system really works. Hospitals are legally required to report prenatal drug exposure, but after that, it's up to CPS to decide whether the child stays with the parent or not. And apparently, if a parent shows some cooperation, like attending appointments or getting a few specialists involved, then CPS might just allow them to keep custody, even if the damage has already been done. This is how the system looks the other way. This is how children fall through the cracks, because it becomes less about protection and more about paperwork. And all the while, Chrisean kept showing the world what kind of mother she truly was. People remembered the time she left her baby in the car to argue with Blueface. They remembered the 3 a.m. beach party. They remembered how she often held her child the wrong way, unsupported and uncomfortable. And still, she went on lives. Still, she smiled. Still, she laughed like none of it mattered. But the internet wasn't laughing. They were watching. They were recording. They were building a case, because now people had had enough. The sympathy was gone. What replaced it was pure concern and a deep question. If this is what we're seeing on camera, what do you think is happening off camera? The noise around this controversy only grew louder. More people started coming forward, more stories started surfacing, and more proof began stacking up against Chrisean. It wasn't just about medical reports anymore. It became a full-blown conversation about parental neglect, mental stability, and the dangerous power of social media influence. The public had started connecting the dots, and what they found was chilling. Some fans, who used to defend Chrisean blindly, began stepping back. They looked at the footage again. They listened to the leaked audios again, and suddenly the puzzle made more sense than ever. The clips where the baby didn't smile, the times he looked disconnected, the way he froze when loud voices were around, all of it painted a picture that was too painful to ignore. That little boy wasn't just sick, he was hurting, he was afraid, and he was learning how to survive in silence. But here's where it gets even darker. Remember the part where she admitted privately that she did drugs and drank throughout her pregnancy? Well, what wasn't shared before was how much and how often. People close to her said she never stopped. Not once. She partied through it all. And worse, she thought it wouldn't affect the baby. Or maybe she just didn't care. That's what had people furious, because it wasn't just about poor decisions, it was about a complete lack of responsibility for another life she brought into this world. And what makes this story different? The public didn't just sit back and gossip, they started investigating. Moms, nurses, former friends, even people who worked in the child welfare system began voicing their concerns online. Some shared similar cases where babies were taken away immediately for far less. Others talked about the loopholes that allowed Chrisean to keep her child despite overwhelming evidence of harm. And still, she went live, still acted unbothered, still carried on like she had done nothing wrong. Then came the photo leaks, images that showed her son hooked up to medical equipment, wires, monitors, and feeding tubes. Some photos showed his skin irritated, raw, possibly from being left in a diaper too long. One nurse allegedly leaked that Junior had bed sores from being left lying down for too many hours at a time. And again, viewers asked, where is CPS? How is this okay? But destiny took an unexpected turn when people realized something even more terrifying. This baby was never wanted. Not really. Chrisean had allegedly told someone close to her that she thought the child would change her life in terms of fame and money, that he would be her billionaire baby. But when things didn't go the way she imagined, when the world didn't reward her the way she thought it would, her resentment started growing. Not toward the world, but toward her own child. That thought haunted people, because if that's true, if she sees him as a burden instead of a blessing, then what kind of treatment does he face behind closed doors? People remembered how she treated others, how she handled animals, how she shouted at fans, how she fought violently online and in real life, and the scary realization was that maybe, just maybe, she treats her son the same way. The public pressure started rising. People began tagging authorities, writing petitions, demanding CPS reinvestigate her case. Even some celebrities spoke out, calling it a tragedy in plain sight. They said what many were already thinking: Chrisean doesn't need to be canceled. She needs to be investigated. And just like that, the controversy wasn't just trending, it was turning into a movement. By this point, the situation had reached a boiling point. The outrage wasn't just online anymore, it was real, loud, and impossible to ignore. People wanted answers, they wanted action, and most of all, they wanted justice for that innocent baby. What started as a few leaked documents had now turned into a nationwide conversation about motherhood, fame, and the price a child pays when a parent is lost in the spotlight. What made this even more unbearable was the silence from Chrisean herself. She didn't make any public statements. She didn't apologize. She didn't even show concern. Instead, she kept posting selfies, going to events, and living like everything was normal. But let me tell you, nothing about this was normal. Her son was suffering, and she was pretending like nothing had happened. And for the people watching, that silence spoke louder than any denial ever could. Then came more heartbreaking details. Sources close to the case revealed that Chrisean's son had not only missed critical medical appointments, but had also been pulled out of therapy sessions meant to help him with his development. Specialists who had once been part of his care team allegedly stopped showing up, not because they wanted to, but because they were no longer being allowed in. One report even said that she refused help unless it came with money or clout attached to it. It was all about her image, never about her baby's healing. But here's the craziest part. Chrisean knew exactly what she was doing. According to a leaked voice message, she said something that left people completely speechless. "He's not what I expected. He's not what I wanted." Those words broke people. That wasn't a mother speaking from frustration. That was a woman showing resentment, cold and cruel, toward her own child. And from that moment on, the internet decided enough was enough. The demand for intervention became louder. Multiple child advocacy pages began sharing her story. Journalists started looking deeper. Influencers who once supported her began cutting ties. Because at this point, it wasn't just about drama, it was about danger. And if those leaked files were even halfway true, then that baby was living in a nightmare while the world watched from the sidelines. But here is the part that shocked people to their core. Despite all the evidence, despite the videos, the documents, the witnesses, Chrisean still had full custody. No charges, no removal, no restrictions. And people started asking the one question no one wanted to say out loud: what will it take for someone to finally step in? Because if a baby testing positive for drugs, suffering from withdrawal, having seizures, showing signs of trauma, being left alone at night, and having over 10 specialists assigned to his care still isn't enough to get him out of that environment, then what is? Let me tell you something. This wasn't just another celebrity scandal. This was a warning about how fame can protect the wrong people, about how systems meant to protect children can fail them over and over, and about how silence, whether it's from the authorities, from the fans, or from the mother herself, can be just as dangerous as abuse. So ask yourself this: if everything we've seen is already this disturbing, what do you think is happening that we haven't seen yet? Because what we do know is already too much to bear. And that's where the story stands for now.